Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Booker, literary aviatrix, and today I have a very special episode of the Aviatrix Writers Room for you. I'm going to be talking to a panel of recently published picture book authors about how they got their story into print and into the hands of their young readers. What this is not, just to be clear, is a primer on how to write a picture book. Just like writing any other story, writing picture books is a craft, and I encourage you to study that craft. Join your local society of children's book writers and illustrators. Go to picture book workshops and pay the little bit of money that they charge for agents and editors to read your manuscript. Those experiences are only going to make your story better and stronger and more readable for young people. But once you have that story ready to go, there are several options for publishing, and that's what we're going to talk about today. You can go the traditional route, which typically involves querying agents, and those agents will then on your behalf reach out to publishers, and that timeline can be a little bit longer. It can take up to 2 years to get your book into print. There's the hybrid option, in which a hybrid company, a reputable one, will often support you in identifying a good artist for your work, will help you design your book and get it into print, and may help with the distribution. And then there's self-publishing. So these are the things that we're going to talk about today from authors who have done it recently. I know my attitudes about publishing for children have definitely evolved over the past couple of years. I come from a background of a Master of Fine Arts in Writing for Children and Young Adults from the Vermont College of Fine Arts, where the majority of people there were traditionally published. And so the common thinking there, obviously, is that you have to be traditionally published in order for your books to get into the hands of librarians, teachers, and parents who are the gatekeepers for children to read them. My attitudes have changed about that as I've seen a lot of very successful self-published and hybrid published authors. And so I just want to provide you with all of the information that you need, because when you go to these workshops to learn how to write, to work on your craft, we typically don't talk about the publishing end of things. And that's what today is all about. Fewer than 10% of pilots and aircraft mechanics are women. These are their stories of tenacity, adventure, and courage. Stories with the power to inspire, heal, and connect. Welcome to the Literary Aviatrix community, where we leverage the power of story to build and celebrate our community and inspire the next generation of aviation. All right, welcome everyone. Let's get started with introductions. Cody, why don't you lead us off?
Yes, hi, thanks Liz. My name is Cody Bogart, the author of the book series Helo Girls. I have book one out called The Firefighting Pilot, and hopefully later this year, Law Enforcement Pilot will be out.
And how did you publish?
Hybrid publishing.
Okay, great, Cody. How about you, Terry?
Hi, I'm Terry Weber. I'm the author of the Operation Aviation picture book series. Fly with Mai Tai is currently out. Tow the Tanker will be coming out in June, and Moose on a Mission will be released in September. And I am traditionally published through Alvareza Publishing.
Excellent. And Caroline?
All right. Hi, I'm Caroline Jensen. I go by Blaze. I am retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, flew F-16s, and I self-published my book Thunder Mouse. That's a children's picture book.
Darcy?
Okay, well, I am Darcy Guyant. I'm a retired Coast Guard helicopter pilot. Retired several years ago, but most recently, within the last couple of years, became an author, children's book author. The series the first book I started is called Into the Storm: The Coast Guard Adventures of Dolphin Gwen, and it's just a story about the Coast Guard helicopter and the crew, the pilot whose name is Gwen, and they do search and rescue missions that are based on actual experiences that I've had. I just turned it into a children's book story, and then I started doing it into a series. The second book is Escaping the Blaze, another rescue, and then the third one in the series, which not many people have seen much about, but it's coming out in June. It's the title of that one is 4 Lives Saved. And again, it's another search and rescue. And that one has a bit of a plot twist in it, but it's all, again, based on real life experiences. And I've got the first book I did was a memoir, which kind of kicked off the whole writing experience for me. And then I did a children's activity book that kind of goes with the Dolphin Gwen series, just a bunch of activities, coloring pages and mazes and dot to dots and things like that for kids. So that's where I'm at so far.
Awesome. So Dolphin Gwen, are those, how did you publish those?
I am self-published. Yeah, okay. I've done everything self-published.
Okay. And how about you, Erin?
Hi, I am Erin Murphy, and I'm a pilot for first officer for United Airlines. I just transitioned over to the 787 from the 757 and 767, and I spent a lot of my layovers and downtime taking writing courses. So that is kind of how I delve into the whole writing world. So I elected to go with a hybrid publishing route because I felt like I needed support. I don't know, maybe that's because I'm still working and traveling. Like I kind of query myself on that. Like, why don't I just go full self-published and have a little bit more control? However, every time I think I'm ready to make that leap into obtaining my files and doing it myself, I like the support of the hybrid. I like the opportunity to collaborate in the hybrid. So my two books are Halfway Home and Daring Dexter, and they both celebrate aviation special role in animal rescue. So Halfway Home is a little bit more emotional, but a dog always struggles to get adopted. And the backdrop is aviation's transportation services and rescue services. And then Daring Dexter is a little bit more comical. Dexter's a street dog who refuses to be air rescued because he thinks it's a downgrade in lifestyle and he's going to lose his street swagger. So all of that was inspired by this crossroads that kind of came together with my volunteerism at the SBCA in Westchester, Pennsylvania, my writing, and then, of course, my love for aviation.
Awesome. Okay. So let's get started with what support and resources you used to prepare and edit your stories. Blaze, why don't you lead us off?
The story that I have was actually something that I wrote on the back of a lineup card about 10 years ago in the Thunderbirds, probably sitting in an F-16. I can't remember if it was there in the briefing room, but it was based off of a story that I told with my son. So I ran into Lisa Bolt Simons, who is the daughter of a Thunderbird pilot. She has 70 books that she's written. She does editing as well. And she's the one who really encouraged me to put my book or make my writing into reality. And then I have a friend, Erin Miller, who I believe might be on your show, who self-published her own children's book as well. And she basically ran me through the steps. She's an attorney, very pragmatic, knows how to run a checklist, and said, you know, here's how you get your ISBNs. Here's how you register through Library of Congress. I have used the same printing house that she used, and I've had a really awful time with them, which has been a different experience than she has, but I can go into that with you later. But my editor also
introduced so Simons was the one who kind of helped you edit this for print?
Yep. She helped me transition the story into something that would be printed. And she also introduced me to a very talented artist who also is a recently retired elementary school teacher. And she works in a lot of different mediums, but she became my illustrator. So it was great to have the illustrator and I like working together, sitting at the same table, showing her pictures of things that are described in the book so that it could be very authentic to the real experience.
Okay, well, that sounds like a lot of serendipity for you to find her and be able to use her talent to bring your story to print. How about you, Terry?
So it's funny. I started writing Moose on a Mission first, so it's the opposite of the order in which they're being released. And I think I was a little too close to Moose on a Mission because I'm a C-17 pilot, so I kept going different iterations. I think I've got like 8 versions of this book. And in terms of editing and figuring out what I actually wanted it to look like, before I even met up with my publisher and got introduced to editors and translators through her, I just reached out to my friends. I've got a good friend who's who's a first grade teacher, master's in early elementary education, and just kind of got her thoughts on how it sounded. I've got another really good friend who's a musician. So he kind of understood like the rhyme and meter really well. So he took a look at the rhyme, and then just had my husband looked at it over and over and over again, had my mom read it, very kind of like grassroots bootstrap editing. And then once I got linked up with my publisher, she then introduced me to Tamara, who's the English editor, and then Gabby, who's our Spanish translator and editor. So they were kind of the ones to put the final polishing touches on it. But it really was a kind of like a team family effort, and just calling in resources that I had who kind of understood the nuances of the language and the sort of the editing process, if you will.
Well, that's great. I'm going to back up with you just a little bit because you're traditionally published and you're talking about working with a publisher. But how did you connect to a publisher? Did you have an agent?
So my publisher is an independent publisher, and they take queries directly. So their query window is only open, I think, like 1 month out of every year, and it just aligned that was around the same time that I was querying. So I did query many an agent. I've got a whole spreadsheet full of red from people who push back, and then a full spreadsheet full of yellow who I still haven't heard from. It's just the tale as old as time when it comes to traditionally published. So I stumbled on Alvareza just in one of my billions of Google searches, trying to find a publisher who might be a good fit, who would be accepting queries. And it worked out really well in that this publisher focuses on military books and military family books. So the theme of my series really aligned well with kind of their mission and what they look for. So speaking of serendipity, like it was very much a stars aligning kind of thing, in that they had their queries open. It's what I was looking, and it was the kind of series that they were looking for at the time.
That is awesome. So you both have these stories and you want to go to print. Erin, you mentioned that you took some writing courses. Did you have any assistance or support in editing, or what resources did you use to edit the actual text of the book before you went to publication? Erin?
So I did too. The resources I chose and was even encouraged to by the company that I did my Journey to Kidlit, was the school that I primarily attended. They offer editing services. However, they also encourage you to get an editor outside of them, because it's just sort of nice to have three. Once you start to get more than that, and I learned this myself through the self-publishing world, my experience, two things happen. One, your family and friends are going to tell you that it's great, right? It's not. It's great. It's great that you're writing and they love you. That's great. But the manuscript itself probably is not. And it's hard to break that high, right? It's a little bit of an ego thing. And then second, so Amanda Jackson, she offers manuscript critiques for picture books. And she was invaluable. Like, she had a very diplomatic way. She might say things like, consider changing this too. And because, she knows a writer's ego is fragile or has a really specific vision, she just sort of encouraged rewrites rather than giving me a directive. But the editors within my hybrid publishing house were the primary shaping of the story.
Okay, great. And how about you, Darcy? Who helped you edit and get your text ready for print?
I did my first draft, and then I volunteer at a elementary school with first grade teachers, and they know me really well, and I know first grade kids very well. So they were the ones that kind of encouraged me to start writing children's books. And so my first draft, I gave it to them to look it over. And of course, they're my friends and they don't want to hurt my feelings. So they gave me a couple little tips here and there. The biggest one was from one of the teachers. She said, "Oh, this is way too long. You got to make it a lot shorter. And remember, you're going to tell the story with illustrations also." So I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need to get real detailed. So that was probably my first biggest helpful tip on the editing. And then I sent I sent my manuscript to a professional editor. I found her on the internet, just did an internet search for editors and looked at a lot of different websites of people and found somebody that was familiar and had done a lot of children's books. So I went with her, and she's edited all three of my children's books. I wish I could. I was trying to look it up real quick. Her first name is Erica, but I can't remember her last name. But I was trying to look it up real quick. But she's great. She provided a lot of real good edits, feedback, not only in the typical punctuation, grammar, that type of stuff, but in the development of the story and a lot of the stuff that a professional editor is going to catch that, and it was tremendous help. So.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for sharing that information. And Blaze, you kind of already talked about how you were introduced to your artist. Terry, how did that work for you?
So through traditional publishing, typically the publisher will match you with an illustrator. Elbow Race is very unique in a good way in that we're very collaborative, myself and Brenda, the illustrator for Operation Aviation. Typically, it's parallel efforts. So the author will write the series, the illustrator will then take it, do the illustrations, and the author typically won't have any input or feedback. It's a very separate process. With Elbow Race, especially with my book series, because it is so nuanced with the detail that we want it to be very accurate in terms of what the aircraft look like and what they do and how they interact with one another. That I am fortunate that Brenda and I have a very collaborative relationship. So we text all the time, we email back and forth. She'll send me a sketch that she's working on and say, hey, does this look good? Does this F-16 have the right hard points? Does, is the T-tail on Moose big enough? And little details like that I don't think I would get from another publisher. I'm really fortunate that Brenda and I have that relationship through Alvareza and through the publishing company.
How did you find your illustrator, Darcy?
I found my illustrator the same way on the internet, just doing some research, children's book illustrators, doing looking at a lot of websites, a lot of people, work that they've done. And I ended up going to a website, a company, and the name of their company is getyourbooksillustrated.com. Makes sense. Popped up, on the internet. So they are all about children's books, illustrations. So I went there. This organization is based in South Africa, but they have illustrators that they work with all over the world. So you kind of go through them as sort of the middleman. They're the manager of the project, but then they hook you up with one of their illustrators that you kind of look at their portfolio also to see what you like and what might be a good fit for you. And then they hook you up with their illustrator. And then they act as kind of like the project manager between you and the illustrator. And it's, again, my third book. I've done my third book through them, all three of my books through them, and it's been working out great with them.
That's awesome. How about you, Erin? How did you find yours?
I found my illustrator through the support of my hybrid publishing house, which is BiblioKid. So currently, I believe they have about 12 illustrators that they kind of have on freelance, and I can't really say they're on staff. And then I submitted my story to a handful of them after being shown samples of their work. And then from there, a couple of them told me, no, this manuscript's not for me. And then the ones that were left, then they gave me samples. And then I selected from there. His name is Anthony Riccici. He's a really excellent artist, even outside of the book illustration world. He's a musician and has a lot of fine art in the Hudson Valley area.
So, Caroline, what made you decide to go self-publish?
I wanted to get my book out as soon as possible. So I really did it, and I don't know, but it did cause me some issues with getting a good print of my book. But a traditional publishing, and I don't know what Terry's experience was, sounded like she found a great publishing house, but it was, I think I started it in April, and then by October I was ready to print and had the book launched for Thunder Mouse. So that was the big thing. I just really wanted it to be out there as soon as possible. I'm getting more into other careers and things, and I wanted that story to be there as part of my overall story.
Yeah, no, I get that. And Cody, how about you? What made you decide to go hybrid publishing?
I like that I have full control through hybrid publishing. So the manuscripts, the illustrations, I have 100% of the rights. So there's nothing they can change without asking me. They can't take anything from me. If I choose to go somewhere else, I take all of it with me. But I didn't want to go through probably what Caroline did and having to do printing. And I didn't want to have to worry about all of that stuff that I'm not an expert in because, just like everyone here, I have other things that I do. So I wanted more time to focus on those. So for me specifically, that's why publishing really worked out.
Okay, so so we got a sense of Caroline's timeline. Cody, what was your timeline from signing on with them to print?
So signing on to February or March of 2023, and it was ready to go in late December. So we went for a publishing date of January 16th. I think that process took longer because I was just trying to get, acquainted with the illustrator and what all that stuff looked like. Because I wrote my script in one day, so that part was really easy. It was just the back and forth, and then timing because I do run a business at the same time, and I'm a mom just like everyone else. Whereas with this book, it seems to be way faster.
Okay. And Terry, what was the timeline for you traditionally publishing the way you did?
It was long. To Blaze's point, like it's not a quick process. I wrote the book, books plural, end of 2021, beginning of 2022. I think I signed with my publisher end of 2022. And then our first release was March of this year of 2024. So it was a several year process. Time is not, if you want it to be quick, traditional publishing is not the way to do it. I chose traditional publishing though, because I didn't have the time and the bandwidth to do any of it really myself. I'm still active duty Air Force. I have a staff job here at the Pentagon. I've got 2 young kids. Like I could not channel enough of my attention into what it takes to self-publish. So it was just a simplicity thing for me. Now, granted, the timeline to get a publisher was not simple, and that took a lot of work and a lot of time. But, to the other ladies' points of what it takes to kind of learn what printer to go to and ISBN numbers and Library of Congress and like that, I could not. So that's why traditional publishing, I think, made the most sense for me, even though the timeline was a little bit longer.
That's cool. And Erin, you kind of already told us a little bit about why you chose to go hybrid, but Darcy, why did you choose self-publishing?
My first book that I wrote was a memoir, and it was just a collection of stories that I wanted to pass down, a legacy type of thing to my family and grandkids and their kids, and so forth. So I didn't think there was going to be a very large audience for this book, maybe 10 people total. So I knew I wasn't going to get a traditional publisher to do that for me. And I initially did have a hybrid that I worked with and actually published the first edition of my memoir through the hybrid. And I wasn't happy. If that's all I did, I probably would have just left my book with them to handle, any promotions and getting it out there on Amazon and so forth. But I continued to write, and I learned more about self-publishing, and then I realized I wasn't really happy with this hybrid. They weren't really doing anything for me to promote the book. They were taking a cut of whenever there was a sale. But so I got all my information back. I got everything back from them, and I unpublished that first book and then republished it with my own ISBN and published it as a second edition, which I then took full control over that process, and then decided that because of that experience and wanting to have control over the process and not feeling like I was getting much help from at least that one hybrid. And unlike Erin, I'm retired. I've got time. I spent a lot of time researching and learning how to do the self-published thing, and made a few mistakes along the way, but I've learned every step of the way. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. It just works for me. May not for everybody, but it works for me. So.
Well, I think that you just bring up an important point in terms of your copyright and what your options are once you sell that copyright. So if you go traditional, that what you just described is not an option for you. Like
Right.
you unless you have it in your contract or you have an arrangement with them that you can buy back your copyright. Once that book is kind of dead, it's dead. Whereas if you go hybrid or you're self-published, you own that copyright and you can reproduce that book in other ways. So some publishers do have agreements where, if you decide to take it back, you just have to change the covers and stuff like that. You can't use their art, but it's just an important point to think about when making decisions about how you're going to publish. So Cody, what does distribution look like for your book? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't do anything with that. That's all done by the publisher. So they put it on Amazon. It's in all the brick and mortars. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart. I mean, I didn't have to do a thing, which is nice.
Okay. And then, yeah, that is nice. And then Caroline, how about for you?
Yeah, I have that great distribution system as well, which is why I've been spending months and months going over different revisions and proofs of my book with Ingram Spark. So that's the big positive to them. But they will do print on demand and they ship out of the warehouse, and Amazon has a deal with them. And then I've also done my own advertising through Google Ads and on my Facebook page and Instagram as well, that offers like a signed copy for for whoever wants to purchase the book. So I probably shipped about 200 books out of my house too, with signatures and notes and things like that.
So as Darcy, as a self-published author, how are you handling distribution?
I have gone print on demand. I know some people, they like to go with a printer to, get 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever copies, and then take care of setting that up with Amazon or doing their own distribution out of their home. I don't have time for that, and I don't have storage for that. My wife would go crazy if she saw our garage full of books sitting there for potentially years. So I decided to go the route of print on demand through Amazon, KDP, and through Ingram Spark. And that works for me. Of course, there's a cost behind that. It costs more to print the books, and which means there's less coming back to me, to my pocket. But it's a trade-off in the time and effort and energy and all the other things that are involved in trying to do that on your own. I do have my own website, and I do have a supply of books that I keep here that if somebody orders a book directly from me through my website, signed copies and so forth, I do send them out. But I've seen what some of the other folks that I collaborate with, like Aaron, do as far as sending out many packages of things. It's like, that's not.
Yeah. So Aaron, you have a hybrid publisher, but I know that I personally have received packages directly from you. So how are you handling your distribution?
Okay. So my distribution this is my Achilles heel. I gotta say, like for anyone who's venturing out in this, everyone has one. Every author that I know of, and mine is the printing and distribution. Same thing with Darcy. I don't think I have the time or the full on means to really just take this on. It is legit 100% whole full-time situation. So again, that's why I lean on the hybrid. So when I need books, I let my hybrid publisher, BiblioKid, know, and they send me a Google form, and I let them know how many of each one that I want. So for instance, and just to give people a price point, like I sort of wish I knew some of this going into it. I was really green. So I just ordered 100 Daring Dexter soft covers and 25 hardcovers. The hardcovers are really getting priced out of, I guess, a lot of demographics is probably the best way to say it. A lot of us have somewhere around $30 to buy a book, but someone who just wants to buy a children's book, I'm 46 years old, and you just saw me chuckle. It is getting a little bananas. I just did a book signing at Barnes & Noble. Almost every hardcover book I picked up was pushing $30. So this is just how much they are now. So I fill out this Google form, and I just did 100 soft cover and then 25 hard covers, and that was about $1,400. And that included shipping and tax. So The soft covers are just, I used to, now Darcy, don't get upset. I used to really not like soft covers. I thought I was kind of like Daring Dexter. I was like Dexter. I thought it was a downgrade. And I thought it was, because I'm into this packaging and unboxing experience. So I wanted these hard covers. But from a printing and distribution standpoint and a cost standpoint, they're skyrocketing. So even right now, I can't even totally afford the gloss pages that I want in my hardcovers. I have a heavier matte that has like a nice sheen on it. But I mean, if I were to order, even a couple hundred of them, it's pushing $3,000. So, and then you like cross your fingers and you hope someone buys a book. So it's a
Well, Darcy's working in schools, so he knows what kind of abuse these books take.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that right, Darcy?
Yeah. And the schools prefer the hardcover, and they have a budget to be able to afford them, where your typical family, and when I do like shows, fairs and stuff, I don't sell very many hardcover to just people walking by or stopping because it's expensive. I agree.
Yeah, no, that's good information. Okay, so how are you two, and I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna come back to that question in just a minute, but how are you two handling promotion and sales? So Darcy, you go.
Okay, marketing. That's not my favorite thing.
You do pretty well at it. I'm surprised to hear that.
I have to really work at it. And I didn't realize how big of a thing it would be. And I've talked to so many authors that, especially self-published. And I think even now with traditional published, they're putting more of the onus on the author themselves to have to get your book out there. You have to do it. Otherwise, the market is so flooded with books. Thousands and thousands are getting published every day, and there's so much competition that you get lost in the haystack. You're a needle in a multiple haystacks. So I look for opportunities to collaborate with others. I do a lot of events, trying to do more direct events face-to-face with people. That's been the most effective thing for me, doing book fairs and other types of things like that.
Like school book fairs.
I'm sorry?
School book fairs?
School book fairs, yeah. I've gotten into schools. They do their annual Scholastic book fair, but I go to the PTSA and say, hey, can I have a table there? And I got to be kept separate from Scholastic because, Scholastic is their own thing, but I've been doing well at that and other events at schools and things like that. But just trying to find opportunities to get the word out there, doing advertisements. I just haven't found the right way to get Amazon or to, Facebook ads or any of that kind of stuff to really work for me. I just haven't had anything that way. So it's still a learning process, still trial and error, I think, a lot of it. But it's one of those things where you have to do it. Otherwise, your book's going to sit there and nobody's going to find it. So
that's right. How about you, Erin?
I semi-enjoy this part, which is probably not shocking to you guys. I oddly find it another form of a creative outlet. That's really how I look at it. So as many even mild successes that I've probably had twice as many failures. So it can feel really defeating, right? You might put in hours into this post or whatever, and it doesn't really quite seem to land or convey. But the number one thing that I learned, I had a small marketing course with my hybrid publisher. Again, another benefit of BiblioKid, that's the experience with my hybrid, is you were required to take small courses before your book launched and up through marketing to kind of give you a jumping off point. FaceTime, exactly what I'm doing with you guys right now. Every single time I post a video of myself, particularly on social media, talking, it's of course not the same thing as an in-person, which Darcy seems to be doing great at with his networking through schools. I get a couple of sales People want to know you. And the only thing that I can kind of like associate it to is, it is just going to sound a little distasteful, but hang in there. It's sort of like a little reality show, right? They want to know you. Who are you? And if reality show causes a weird visceral reaction, you're not a TV person, end of a movie, when they show the credits and you say, oh, wow, that's a real person. So I shoot for that human to human connection. My videos aren't perfect. I stammer. I make mistakes. But in a weird way, I feel like that I'm being able to relate to people a little bit more, because it's not, I'm just not a perfect speaker, and it's just a little bit more relatable. I try to come across as my genuine self, and, like attracts like. So I would say the FaceTime and in-person events are probably the strongest link for sure. And then my second, and I hate to say this, I don't know how to say it without it sounding odd, but not from a manipulative standpoint, but just collaboration, celebrating others' books, making an intention to be a part of other people's books, and genuinely supporting their joy is going to register back with other authors and say, oh, I'm doing a book event. Oh, let's see what Erin's up to, because she's always helping me out with my book. So again, I don't mean that to be like a manipulative thing, but just like whoever you start to genuinely connect with, you start to come up with ideas, and it just grows from there.
That's great. And I'm a huge fan of the collaboration. I encourage it, especially for children's books, because if you're a parent and you have a young reader, and especially if you're trying to introduce them to aviation, if you're willing to buy one book, you're willing to buy them all. I know I was.
Absolutely.
So I think it's definitely, especially in the children's world, but even as adult books, if I read one book that, is an action adventure that involves aviation, I might want to read another one. So, okay. And so let's just talk about, as much as you're comfortable, sort of the percentage take on a book sale, just for comparison. So for Blaze, a self-published author, like what percentage of the price of the book are you receiving?
So if I sell it through Amazon, and even like some air shows this summer, they will purchase our books at a 40% retailer discount. The cost of the book is about 50% of the cover of the book. So I don't make that much money. The last thing, and Ingram Spark will help you price it out to make sure that you make money. But I think I'm only at like $1.60 right now if it sells through an online store. And I will get about $8 a book when you take away like the shipping materials and the postage, and which I collect postage there, but I usually end up collecting less than it costs on the shipping. But what you don't see is all the money I put into a professional book designer. My editor worked pretty much pro bono, but I paid her. The illustrator, I got a great deal, but it's still, at this point with the books, I'm probably about $10,000 in. So all of that I had to come up with out of my pocket. And then you make the sales back as fast as you can sell your books. And the more you can sell yourself, the better off you are.
Yeah. Okay. And how about you, Cody, for hybrid? What's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the publisher, I put money in for hybrid publishing. I get 80%, they get 20%. If it's on Amazon, Amazon takes 55%. Then if you think about, if it comes from the publisher to Amazon, which that's how it is, or to Barnes and Noble, I'll get their cut. So that does reduce it a bit for me. But if I get 80, then the more I can sell my book, the better that is, because that's 100% return.
Right. Okay. And how about for you, Terry, traditionally publishing?
So obviously traditionally published, you're not getting a high cut at all. So typically it's a 10% is this industry standard for contract. But when you're a picture book author, half of that goes to the illustrator. So my cut is 5%, Brenda's is 5%, and then the rest of it is, publisher, distribution, et cetera. So we do have an advantage in Elva Race is that they also have the distribution company, Military Family Books. So if individuals go through Military Family Books, we get a higher percentage versus if they go through Amazon or a traditional like brick and mortar type store. But I think in terms of all three of these options for publishing, traditional publishing is going to be the one that probably you don't get as much as a return, but they do assume all the upfront costs. So like Blaze was talking about, the money that she had to sink into it ahead of time. I didn't have to do that. They assume the risk with that. So yeah, I think lots of good options either way. It's just kind of a matter of what angle you want to take it, and how individuals prioritize, like, you know, the money aspect, the time aspect, the involvement aspect. No wrong answer, certainly. It's just very different.
Right. And did your publishing company offer you an advance?
So my publisher doesn't do advances, but I know a lot of other publishing houses do. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for frame of reference for people who aren't familiar, when you get an advance as an author, you actually have to sell that advance out before you start getting royalties on your book. So one way or another, I mean, you can pay up front or you can pay in the long run, but you know that you have to sell those books in order to start making money on top of whatever that advance might be if you are offered one.
Right. And that's why my publisher doesn't do advances typically. She's like, it's just really anticlimactic. Like, you finally sell your book and then you get a check for like $1 kind of thing. So yeah, it keeps it simple, not having to do the advance up front. Yeah.
So Darcy, you're self-publishing, you're using KDP, like print on demand, and then Aaron, you're using the hybrid publisher. So for a hardback and a paperback, what's your percentage take home on a book, Darcy?
It's not a lot. You know,
okay,
I don't know
it's
if I
not a
can
lot
tell
for
you.
anybody, so you don't have to be shy about it. Like,
I
everybody prepare yourself. You're not going to make money.
Yeah, I'm not going to get rich at this. In fact, it's a funny story. Yesterday, I spoke at an elementary school, 450 kids throughout the day in smaller groups, and almost every group, when I got to the question and answer, they asked me, well, how much money do you make? And I keep telling them, well, so far I haven't made anything, and I may never make anything, you know, because I'm a self-publisher and I got to spend my own money to make this happen. So I look at the price, the average price, you know, I compare my book and the kind of the age range and the number of pages and everything. And I look at what's kind of the middle ground out there. And that's where I price mine. And because, you know, I'm self-published and print on demand, I probably on a hardcover right now, I'm probably making about $7 or $8 on a book. Where with a paperback, I'm probably doing about 3 or 4 on each paperback. So it's something. It's on the positive side, but it's going to take a lot of sales to be able to make back my investment.
For sure. How about you, Aaron?
So similar. So I purchased my hardcovers for $12.84, the halfway home ones, and they retail at $16.99. And then, of course, because I'm hybrid at Amazon, it literally comes out to like $2 a book. The soft covers, they do better. I struggled with this, and then I just made the leap. So my soft covers are $17.99, and that is pretty much what a hardcover would normally sell for. And here's why. I was encouraged by my hybrid publisher to use a little bit of long vision. In a year or two, how much would you charge for this book? Because it kind of gets stuck. Like halfway home, probably should be priced a little more. So I was encouraged to select a price that feels a little uncomfortable. So that felt uncomfortable for me, but I guarantee you in 3 years from now, you'll be like, yeah, it's $17.99. And we're just, you know, we might still have comments about it, but that's kind of where it's going to land. And the younger parents who are coming up aren't going to have a point of reference, and they're just going to spend $17.99. So, but I buy those at $9.89, and then my publisher will take $25. So I make about $4.50 on those. And then the very last thing I wanted to share, though, is I also self-published a coloring book. And so a couple people do, like Darcy does a great activity book too. This includes the whole entire story text. And these are only $9.99. And so the reason why I did this was because I wanted to have a fun companion for halfway home. I'd like to do one for Daring Dexter too. They're very affordable and they print crazy fast. I've had some printing problems with the color prints. Some are erroneous, some need to go back. Like that has happened to me. So that would probably be that kind of pairs up when I said earlier, my Achilles heel is the printing. I have had printing errors. I really wish someone told me that in the beginning. So about 3% of prints can come back erroneous. It's devastating because you put so much into this, and or if a customer gets it, I wanted to like put my head in a foxhole and never come out. However, just chill, right? If you ordered a book from someone and it was a misprint, oh, geez, okay, I'll return it or do whatever needs to happen. It's probably not the end of the world, but for the artist, it's painful. So all to say, I wanted something that printed easy in black and white, hence the coloring book. And then I also wanted something less expensive. So these bad boys, I love them. I buy them for $2.89 and I sell them at $9.99. I make the most with my coloring book. So this is solely published on KDP. This does not have anything to do with my illustrator or my publisher. And then the author that helped me curate this, she's a retired special needs teacher. Her name is Holly DeBella McCarthy. Her books are Dilly Duck Plays All Day, Dilly Duck Plans a Parade. She turned me on to this coloring book, and I mean, it's competitively selling with the rest of the books. So that is I just wanted to talk about that for a price point option. If you have that itch to do book number 2, but my goodness, it's so costly, you might be able to play with an activity book that prints just in black and white, and you can kind of skip some of those printing woes.
Darcy, let's hear about your activity book.
Yeah. So I spent a couple of months last summer putting the activity book together myself. I used Canva to do pretty much all of the illustrations and puzzles. And I grabbed stuff where I could find it for free on the internet and then modified it on Canva and put it all together. So it was very low cost to me to do that, just my time basically. And then I developed my own cover. I just, put together my own cover, and KDP allows you to do that relatively easily. And because it does print black and white, there's a relatively low printing cost. But then I sell mine for $9.99 or something like that. But I also use it as a promotional item, a gift. A lot of times when I go to do a fair or a show or something, I'll ask people to sign up for my email or my give me their email address so they can go on become my newsletter, and I offer a free PDF copy of that activity book, and they can print out individual pages for their kids, their family, even schools. And I put it on the copyright page that if it's used for educational purposes, teachers can print it out at the school and parents. Teachers use it, and I kind of use it as a loss leader type of thing, with the idea that, hey, if they have this activity book and the kids like it, hey, maybe they want a book, the story that goes along with the characters in this activity page. So it's helpful, and haven't really sold a lot of them, but I do give away a lot of them. So
you guys have talked a little bit about it, but let's get into it a little bit more. Let's talk about how you are getting this book out in the world. What are your platforms? Where are you? where are you finding the most success to bring your customers to your books? Terry, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so my publisher and the illustrator and I kind of divide and conquer in this a little bit. So the publisher obviously works through their channels, and they kind of do all the industry stuff. They also have discussions with like DoD education initiatives and CDCs and things like that. So they kind of handle the big rocks, if you will. In terms of like being kind of boots on the ground, like knowing the people who are flying these planes and working on the planes and kind of getting it to them, that's more of my role, since I am, still active duty and have all these wonderful contacts and a lot of great friends who spread the word for me, and, people who just take the books to random squadrons and drop them off. And so I'm kind of fortunate that I can kind of rely on friends and contacts to spread the word through those channels. And then Brenda, the illustrator, is a heavy hitter in the creative space. So she kind of reaches out to her industry contacts and other illustrator friends and spreads the word through that those channels. So we are very much like a three-headed monster, if you will, and that we all kind of have our own role. Brenda's and mine are probably admittedly a lot smaller than the publishers, but we kind of do what we can, through social media, just contacts that we have, friends, email, kind of the old school stuff.
Well, that's great. It sounds like pretty decent support from your publisher, which not everybody is getting these days. So that's awesome. How about you, Cody?
Yeah, so I am not a huge fan of social media, but I like LinkedIn. I'm not interested in doing Facebook at this point or whatever else it's called right now. And that's just because that's my personal thing. So the best stuff out on their social media platforms and campaigns, like I said, it's really networking who you know. You know, I've been my brand for over 20 years or just about 20 years now. And it's really who you know in networking. I think that's quite common in the aviation industry. And then, you know, I do like doing the boots on the ground. I go to events, I go to books. I think that's really fun. Like selling in person I'm social. So I really enjoy directly. So the more I can get in front of people, I like that for me.
And Blaze, how about you? What are you doing to sell your book?
Mine's a lot of word of mouth too. I've got some great friends who bought copies and then bought more copies. So it's good. I also found like a backup printer close to where I live in Minnesota that's provided me other copies while I wait for Ingram Spark to get things right. But word of mouth has been great. I know that I did get a couple sales through Google Ads. You can do advertising through Facebook and Instagram with Meta. And then just the word of mouth has really been the big thing, having people call me and wanting a couple books to have. And then I've been donating them as well. I sent some to Erin Murphy for a free book event that she does. And I had a bunch of books and I gave them to the elementary school in the town where I grew up. So first and second graders all got a copy of a book that wasn't suitable for sale, but I still got to kind of put the word out there.
That's good. That's a good thing to do with it. So I'm going to throw a question at you that I didn't script because I have 3 military or former military pilots here, 2 of whom have published books that involve military aircraft, and one who I know wants to do that later. So in terms of publishing a book that involves a military aircraft, did you have a relationship with your particular services or clear it through their public affairs? What were the requirements for you? I know, Terry, you're still on active duty, and Blaze, you're using an aircraft that you performed in on behalf of the Air Force, and Cody, I think that you have Army stuff coming. So what are the nuances around that for you guys?
Yeah, so from the active duty perspective, I reached out to legal and talked to JAG quite in depth and have a lot of email traffic from them as kind of a CYA, if you will, that says, you know, it's okay if you do this. You need to put disclaimers on pretty much everything that says this is not a reflection of the DoD or its policy. This is all personal. So I have that all over my website. We've got it in the front cover of the books as well. And I think my publisher has it on their website too. And then I can't market in uniform. So similar kind of how we handle like political things, like you can go and do it, but you have to be in civies and make it very clear that you're not in a military capacity and speaking on behalf of the military. So there's that piece of it as well. And then like, I really wanted to just take a whole bunch to the Pentagon and just like leave them on random desks and like give them to the chief of staff and like, look how fun this is. That can't happen. So little things like that. And then when I was speaking to the illustrators, well, there's certain things that we have to stay away from. So you can't use like a specific tail number or, you can't do anything that's like too true to real life, if you will. But those rules and regulations are a little bit more for like the adult authors, like the nonfiction authors who like the SEAL Team 6 guys, you know, like they can't obviously put in a lot of information about their operations. It's not so much like, you know, make believe jets. So little things here and there that I have to stay away from. But if I have a question, I'll always reach out to JA and just make sure that they're okay with whatever I'm planning on doing. And if they're not, then kind of what the regulation is around that. And they've been a fantastic resource for sure. Very helpful. Apparently a lot of people at the Pentagon like to publish books. So they're like, oh yeah, you're like the 10th person we've talked to this month. No big deal. So they've been really, really helpful.
So I'm Air Force also and retired, but I got routed through a completely different path than Terry did. There's the Air Force Licensing and Trademark Office down at Randolph Air Force Base. And that was actually about 6 weeks of back and forth about the Air Force emblem that's on my Thunderbird helmet was drawn exactly the same way in the artwork. And we went back and forth about how it has to have a certain amount of separation, 10% standoff, like all this crazy stuff, even though it's like exactly what's on the real world uniform. So that took a while. And then I also had to go through the book office in New York City. They're actually the National Media and Outreach Engagement for the Air Force Public Affairs. So they approved some stuff and then kicked it over to the Air Force Licensing and Trademark Office, who said I had to take all of the Air Force and the, the emblem, like the original emblem had to come off of the planes that was on the cover of the book, and then updating the Thunderbird helmet to look different so that it complied with their 10% standoff. So it was really interesting and a speed bump I didn't expect on the road to publishing.
It is interesting. They seem to be more interested and concerned about the illustrations than they are about the words. I didn't have any pushback with the dialogue at all that I have in my book, but to your point, Blaze, like they're concerned about the imagery, I think, a little bit more than I probably assumed they would be.
Interesting. Cody, do you have anything to add on that yet?
So I haven't done a military one yet, but even just having an aircraft in your book is right. It could be infringement if it looks too particular. So my intent throughout each book will be to make it a really generic, nondescript aircraft. When it comes to the military one that I plan on doing down the road, again, I'm going to be very generic and nondescript.
I will add, Liz, if you're okay with me chiming in on something else here. So there's the military component and getting it past them. But for my book, since they're after specific, or they are focused on specific aircraft, there was also the manufacturer piece of this too. So like for our F-22 book, my publisher's legal team reached out to Lockheed's legal team and was like, hey, what are we dealing with here? Are you guys okay with us doing this? What do we need to do to make this all right with you guys? Kind of giving them a heads up and then allowing them to give feedback based on what we were planning on doing. So similar guidance that I got from the Air Force side, which was, just make sure that you put in there that this is not a representation of the company itself, that we are in no way associated with this. So again, in the front cover of the book, it has, this is in no way associated with the Department of Defense, the Department of the Air Force, Lockheed Martin, or any other manufacturer. So lots of disclaimers there, not only for the military side, but also for the manufacturing side as well.
So for Darcy, you're using a Coast Guard helicopter. Did you work with the Coast Guard to receive permission to use their brand in that Dolphin helicopter? Were there any considerations for the aircraft manufacturer? What did you think about? And then Aaron, I'll ask you the same thing, for the type of aircraft that you decided to use. So go ahead, Darcy.
Maybe I'm confessing something that I shouldn't, but no, I did not. It's kind of like, there's public domain, things that are produced by the government are in the public domain. You don't necessarily have to get, they're not copyrighted. You don't have to get permission. So I kind of just figured, well, yeah, it's public domain. And so I used the actual images and they're on the internet. So to answer your question, no, I didn't talk to anybody about that particular thing.
And how about you, Aaron? Did you think carefully about that?
I did, particularly for book number 2. So book number 1, I intentionally made the animal air rescue generic. However, one of the air rescues, Wings of Rescue, utilizes a Pilatus PC-12. When they typically charter an Embraer 120 through a freight service for the animal air rescues. But when they have smaller missions, they use a Pilatus. A Pilatus was near and dear to me. I flew one right after I flight instructed. So once I saw that being used, it felt a little serendipitous more than anything. So I just kind of kept it generic for halfway home. But in Daring Dexter, I did obtain copyright approval for the legal documentation through the state of Pennsylvania for use of the logos and the actual aircraft types for Wings of Rescue, Race for Life Rescue, and Pilots to the Rescue. I wanted that one. what I was coming up against with Halfway Home, and one of my regrets on Halfway Home, and I just don't have the extra $500 right now to change it because that's what it'd be, is I wish it had a subtitle, because so many people are like, well, what's animal at risk? What's animal at rescue? I don't even know what that is. So unless they buy the book, I have a back matter sheet in the back, and I do have the animal air rescues listed in there. So I got approval for that for Halfway Home. But I do wish I had a little bit more oomph about exactly who they are and what they are in Halfway Home. But it was my first go around. I allow myself a little grace.
Well, I want to wrap things up here pretty soon. I'm interested to know any lessons learned, anything that you would have done differently, and any advice that you have for somebody coming into this. And Blaze, let's start with you.
I would say, even though the self-publishing route is faster, give yourself like a huge additional window to hit those kind of unexpected speed bumps in the road. So I think that was the biggest thing. The book launch, receiving those books was very rushed, even though I had it led by 2 weeks and I still didn't get the books on time. So also when you're publishing anywhere, the time of the year, like right around the holidays, printing presses seem to be a lot busier than other times of the year. So if you're trying to do a fall or winter launch, it might take a little bit more time, but it would definitely be just give yourself a lot more time. And almost, if I did it again, I would wait to get books in hand before I even plan to launch the book.
Good advice. How about you, Cody? Lessons learned, advice, anything?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a very strategic person. So I actually, before doing anything, I kind of sat down and tried to look at everything holistically. What's my goal? What am I looking to get out of this? Is it just a book? Is it a series? Where do I want to go with it? So I just made sure I sat down ahead of time and had a plan of what I was really looking to do with this. I think the hiccup for me is the publishing process for me, printing, distribution, all that went so smoothly. But what I didn't think about, to Caroline's point, is the back end of that. Like, am I looking to ship these books myself? Okay, so what's packing material, a printer, a scale, what mailing service or shipping service do I use? I'm not a logistics major, so that's a lot of learning if I choose to go that route. But it's, I think, just the back end stuff that I didn't really think about too much. So I'm really, again, refocusing my strategic goal. What am I looking to do with this? So take those things into consideration. And like she mentioned, those all costs go against you.
Yeah, I would say just don't give up, and maybe come up with a couple different plans if the first one fails on contact. So, I think everybody kind of goes into it like, oh, I'm going to get agent straight out of the gate and I'm going to go straight to a big 5 publisher and it's going to be a bestseller overnight. And, and then you kind of get into the weeds a little bit and you're like, oh my gosh, like I've got 50 agents on a spreadsheet and 50% of them have already, turned me down right off the gate without even looking at the manuscript. And, all these publishing houses, like you have to have an agent, or, their window for queries is 1 week out of the year and I missed it. Or, there's just so many little things like that I don't think you really know until you get into it. So just kind of have that in the back of your mind. Like, I don't say that to scare anybody necessarily. It's just one of those things that like you kind of learn as you go along and, kind of keep that why in the back of your mind and pivot it as you need to, but not just because it's not working out exactly the way that you thought it would.
Okay. I would have talked to more authors like myself and Darcy and the others that you interviewed earlier today first. I would have, like I said, there like a couple of things that have gone sideways. I think I would have been a little bit better. It sounds like a deep word, but a little emotionally prepared better, because it does feel like a kick in the teeth a couple of times. You're just like, man, I really put so much into this and it's not landing, or there is a problem with the product or something like that. I would have tried to have a little bit more community. So mine was make the book and then I started to create community. I would have loved to have had community first. And a lot of people said, hey, get a critique group and things like that. All of that is good. For me, in my experience, everyone's different. I did join a couple critique books and they just weren't that solid. Everyone was sort of thinking about writing. Extremely encouraging, and I got great feedback, but I had yet to meet anyone that like really had just kind of gone off and done it, unless I just sort of started following people on social media, which oddly did does and did encourage me. Every time I see someone else kind of making a win, it does sort of re-motivate me and re-energize me. So for sure, I wish I had a little bit more community before I started.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then hopefully we can be that community for the next people who come, right?
Yes.
And how about you, Darcy?
I guess I would have to say I didn't know what I didn't know until I started doing it. And now I know, looking back, hindsight's 2020, it would have been very helpful to have been in a community group like Erin was talking about. But I think the biggest shock to me that I didn't anticipate or realize was the follow-on, the marketing after the book is done. You're not done. Getting the book done is actually the easy part. And now it takes a lot of extra work if you are serious about getting the book out there into the public, into the hands of people. That takes a lot of effort and some money to do that. And I wish I had known that ahead of time. I may have been a little better prepared, but like I said, it's a learning process. And I think what you're doing, Liz, by putting this together is going to be tremendously helpful to people that are in the thinking about it stage, like we were at one time, to get some actual experience from those that have made mistakes and learned along the way. And now we're trying to help you. So
I think that's great advice. And I opened this with my opening remarks talking about how my attitudes have changed about publishing options. I came from a very traditionally published focused world where that was the only way. I don't agree with that necessarily anymore. And so that's really the point of this, is just to show people what the other options are. There are so many variables in the traditional publishing industry. They have, first of all, the agents' personal preferences play, then what does their list look like? And we are a very niche focus here, and we understand our why. We know why we're doing this. We know that we need to get these stories in front of young people, but that's not everybody else's crusade. And so, you were very fortunate to find a military publisher to do this traditionally, especially while you're on active duty and parenting and doing all the things that you're doing. But to your point, don't give up and don't think that that's the only way that you can do this if you're willing to invest the time and energy and the money to get the books out there. Well, thank you so much. Let's just tell everybody where we can find you and your books one more time. Terry.
So you can find me TerryWeberWrites.com, TerriWeber. And then my Instagram handle is @TerryWeberWrites. And then my publisher is Elvaresa Publishing.
So it'll be helogirls.com. I'll be selling the books on there. So I'm learning that process, right? You can actually go to the publisher, which is Blue Balloon, and purchase the book through there. Again, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart. I'm also on Instagram @HeloGirlsBook, and I'm on LinkedIn under my name. So
you can get to a link to my Shopify site through blazejensen.com, where you can get a signed copy or anywhere that books are sold, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, you name it, online. And I have a audiobook that's going to be coming out soon, so I'll let you know the platform for that. It's rewritten and all theatrical. And then also I have Adventures of Thundermouse with an underscore between each word. And I've had some pilots flying with Thundermouse too. So I'll be getting more into that this summer. And if you buy the book and you like it and you have a cool adventure.
And that's on Instagram.
Yep. Instagram, Adventures of Thundermouse.
Darcy.
All my books are available on Amazon.com or any other online book sales. Barnes & Noble and, any of the online booksellers. And I have a website. You can buy them directly from me on my website, which is my first name and last name, darcyguyant.com. And you can find me there. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all the regular social media pages.
Yep. And doing a great job there. And Erin, how about you?
Yeah, so I can be found at Erin Murphy Books with an S.com, Instagram @Erin Murphy Books. Facebook, I have a page, Erin Murphy Books, and then my regular Instagram or Facebook is just Erin Murphy, but I tend to just douse my regular with book stuff too. So you can find me in any of those channels.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope these authors' insights provide you a roadmap to make informed decisions about how to get your picture book in print. I have interviewed several of them about their books and writing journeys, along with many other authors, and you can listen to those interviews on the Literary Aviatrix website, YouTube channel, and podcast. Blue skies, happy writing, happy reading.
I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to say